Fiction based on a true psychosis. The Fourth Communion in 2017. You laid your cheeks on the grass and stared at the sun unblinking. You said Saturn's reflection that the mother goddess, the fallen Eve, is bored. She has played many characters over the eons of time, shape-shifted her curves in countless time-space loci. You've always had the ring, Saturn. Why are you still looking for it? Saturn is quiet, but he listens. Maya says, through you, when it has been with you all along, go within.
There's a reason that Sarai is introduced as barren, and it's to set the stage. I think it was Anton Chekhov who, when he was talking about the stage setting for a play, that if there was a rifle hanging on the wall, then it had better been used before, I believe, the second act, or it shouldn't be hanging there at all, right? And so this is stage setting, and part of the reason that the biblical writers are pointing out that Abram's wife is barren is because it's a real catastrophe for Abraham, and for Sarai as well, that she's barren. And so it's showing the trouble that Abraham's in at the beginning of the story. And it's also see, what happens as the story progresses is that Abraham and Sarah are eventually granted a son, but it's way late in the story, and they're very, very old by the time it happens. And of course, you're not going to be a father of nations without having a child. And so the writers are attempting to make the case that if you forthrightly pursue that which God directs you to pursue, let's say, that all things are possible. That's the idea in the narrative.
I woke up this morning realizing I need help. I need a divine intervention from Christ again. Jesus, I need to stop drinking. Please take away my addiction to alcohol. Jesus, I need to start eating right. Please take away my addiction to sugary and salty foods. I want to be a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker. I want to be a journalist, journaling with the craft and discipline of journalism. I want to meet people. I was shooting pool with the man I met on Tinder last night. I kept beating him at the game. He was a bit ashamed, but I told him not to get disheartened or make it mean anything, especially the story that a girl could beat him at pool. Think of it this way, I say. You got beaten by an Asian girl who had played pool as a pastime all throughout high school. I brought up the topic of Jesus. Turns out his family are from the faith, but he has turned away. Jesus keeps bringing me people who grew up with the faith and who have left. Perhaps it's because I grew up without the faith and have turned to faith for personal life-death needs. I have addictions. According to Webster Dictionary, the synonym for addictions are dependency, dependence, habit, problem, devotion to, dedication to, obsession with, infatuation with, passion for, love of, mania for, enslavement to. If I'm going to enslave myself to something, then let it be something that is worth the sacrifice.
People are acting this out, and the fundamental conception is so profound that it's really quite awe-inspiring. It's breathtaking, really, when you understand what message is trying to be conveyed. You have to make sacrifices, and what do you have to sacrifice? You have to sacrifice that which is most valuable to you currently that's stopping you. And God only knows what that is. It's certainly the worst of you. It's certainly that. And God only knows to what degree you're in love with the worst of you. So you move from the unbearable present to the ideal future, and you can't help that. You have to live in a structure like that. That's your house. That's another way of thinking about it. And if you want to get your house in order, and if you want it to be a place that you can live properly, then you have to plan the future that is perfect.
I'm a bit insane. According to Webster's Dictionary for synonyms of insanity, mental illness, madness, dementia, lunacy, instability, mania, psychosis, craziness. One could say perhaps all of us are a little bit insane. Some of us are just better at hiding it than others.
Well, because of Geppetto's decision, the transcendent manifests itself. It takes the form of the blue fairy. Here, that's the positive element of nature, right? So we could say, well, nature, it's not so clear that she's on your side, right? She's the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland who runs around screaming when you go down the rabbit hole. Who runs around screaming off with their heads and who says, in my kingdom, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. That's Mother Nature. But then we might say, well, how do we know that Mother Nature's attitude towards you isn't negative because your attitude towards things isn't proper? And that's what this film attempts to indicate. The idea is that if you aim properly, then nature aligns itself behind you. Now, it also arrays itself in front of you, perhaps even as an antagonist, but the power that it provides you with from within might be sufficient to overcome it from without. And I think that the clinical evidence is clear about that. Because one of the things that we do know is that if you take people who are confronting terrible things and shrinking from them, and you teach them how to structure their behavior so that they can advance with courage, everything works better for them. Their fears decrease and their character grows. And so there might be enough of nature within us to help us withstand the nature that's outside of us. And it depends, at least to some degree, on how it is that we orient ourselves in the world, to some unknowable degree. Now, Geppetto wants an autonomous individual as a son. And that's also something that makes him a great person, because autonomous individuals have their own will. And if you're a tyrant, it's the last thing that you're going to want. And if you're the tyrant who's jealous of his son, it's even more so the last thing you're ever going to want. And so to aim high and to want the development of the autonomous individual are the same thing. And I would say that's the core story in some sense of Western culture, is that to aim high and to develop the autonomous individual are the same thing.
I stopped a white guy leaving the pool hall and said, "Were you just at Benihana's with us?" He shook his head and said, "I don't even know what that is." I looked to my pool partner, a bit embarrassed that I just stopped a more attractive guy whilst we were playing a game of pool. My mistake, I tell him. I thought he was sitting next to us at Benihana's. The guy looked suspicious. And then I said, "All white people look the same." He hunched over the pool table and steadied his shot. "That's racist," he says. "I know," I say, "but apparently I can get away with it since I'm a minority." Apparently that's how it works nowadays. If you're a minority, you can get away with racism. Super dry. My delivery sucks.
It might be the case, but the satirical and the ironic and the troublemaker, the comedian, the fool is the precursor to the Savior. Why? Because you're a fool when you start something new. And so if you're not willing to be a fool, then you'll never start anything new. And if you never start anything new, then you won't develop. And so the willingness to be a fool is the precursor to transformation. And that's the same as humility. And so if you're going to write your destiny, you can do a bad first job. You're going to get smarter as you move forward. That's the thing, is that so something beckons to you. That's what happens here. Maybe the star that Geppetto wished on was the wrong damn star, but at least it was a star, right? At least it was in the sky. At least it moved him forward. And so you say in your life, well, something grips you and fills you with interest. And you think, well, should I do that? And the answer is, if not that, then something. What if it's a mistake? It's a mistake. rest assured. What do you know? You're going to stumble around, right? And what's going to happen is this. You're going to not stay in stasis. You're not going to wander around in circles. And I see people like that. They said, well, I never knew what to do, and now I'm 40. It's like, that's not so good. That's not so good. And you might say, well, and there is a literature too that suggests that people are a lot more unhappy when they look back in their lives about the things they didn't do than they are about the mistakes they made while they were doing things. And so that's really worth thinking about too, because there's redemptive mistakes. And a redemptive mistake would be a mistake that you make when you go out and try to do something. You know, you think, okay, I'm going to try to do this. And you're not good at it. You make a bunch of mistakes. It's like, what's the consequence if you pay attention? You're not quite so stupid anymore. That's the thing, is you've been informed by the results of your errors. And so what happens is you follow the beacon, you follow the light. And you're blind, so you don't know where the light is. It's dimly apprehended only, and you're afraid to follow it. But you decide to take some stumbling steps towards it. And as you take stumbling steps towards it, you become illuminated and enlightened and informed because of the nature of your experience, because you're pushing yourself beyond where you are, and you're going into the country that you have not yet been in, and you learn something. And so what happens then is the star moves. You move 10 feet towards it, and you think, no, that's not right. I didn't get it right. It isn't there. It's actually there. And so then you see it somewhere else, and you shift yourself slightly, and you move forward. And that's what happens, is that you continue as you change. The thing that guides you forward moves, right? It's like God in the desert in Egypt, the pillar of light that you're following. It's moving. It's not a permanent thing. You move towards it, it moves away, it guides you forward. And so you say, well, is what I'm aiming at paradise itself? And the answer to that is no, because what do you know? You couldn't see paradise if it was right in front of you, but you might get a glimmer of it. And so you move towards it and you grow. And then the next time you open your eyes, you see a little bit more clearly.
It's a struggle between faith and ambition. Pastor Judah Smith runs a nonprofit. I remind myself, I'm not going to be starving, broke, homeless on the street. I'm just not. As long as I keep my head on my shoulder, stay sober, as long as I keep eating the proper foods, don't spend anything more than I will need and utilize. Eat everything I have bought. Even the shitty ones I know I shouldn't have bought, because that'll teach me a lesson not to buy it again. Responsibility. My mother called me on Christmas Day. She offered to pay for my car insurance that's overdue. She knew I had no money to pay for it. She told me I could pay her back later. I accepted her offer, but I had not executed on it. I would rather just let the insurance charge me or drop me this time. I have to learn. No more handouts. I love my parents, but I can't have it in my mind that they're going to pick up after me every time. I have to grow the fuck up.
And if you're crying out for something to do, then that's the best news you could possibly have. It's like, things aren't so good, but neither are you. So if you stop doing the things that you knew to be destructive, which is the right place to start, if you're going to clean up your room, what do you do first? Well, you just get rid of the mess. And no one has to come in and tell you, hopefully, what's the worst mess. It announces itself to you. And you can certainly know yourself, and this is a very easy meditative exercise, to sit down and think, okay, I'm doing one thing really stupidly that I should stop doing. It's like, how long is it going to take you to figure out what that is? It's about 2 seconds, right? You've known it forever. And you could even make it less demanding. You could say, there are some stupid things that I'm doing that I know are stupid and wrong, that I could stop doing, that I would stop doing. And then you can just start with that. And you can just do that. And maybe it's just a little thing, although it's not, because it's a step forward on the proper voyage. It's not a small thing. And you think, well, what would happen? You could say, let's do this for a year or even a month. Just try not to do things you know to be stupid and wrong for a month. Who then decided to make a real effort and to try to make where they were better, instead of being bitter about where they weren't, because That's the bitterness that really does you in. It's really not good. It's the opposite of gratitude. It's the manifestation of resentment. It makes you malevolent. It's very, very bad to be bitter. It's hell to be bitter. And if you're 40 and you're not successful, then you have to accept your lot, and you have to start to improve what's right in front of you. And if you do that, it doesn't take very long. It's quite interesting to watch people. Things can be a lot better in 6 months, and they can be way better in 2 years. Like, it's a struggle, uphill struggle, but it's by no means impossible. And I don't know, again, what the limit of that is. I suppose it depends to some degree on the degree of your commitment. But anyway, so it's another indication of the real validity of this story. God isn't setting this up to be easy, right? Abraham's old, and his wife is old too, and more than that, she's barren. How is he going to be the father of nations? How is he going to be successful? Well, the initial departure point is insufficient, radically insufficient. And that's very inspiring, because it means that you can start from where you are.